Hello and welcome to the second and final episode of this build series. In the first episode I designed a PCB for the busboard and an enclosure. In this episode I will put everything together. But enough talking. We have a lot to cover today, so let's get started. And after a couple of weeks waiting time, I finally received a blue box in the mail. I ordered 10 of these PCBs, because I will also use them for a future project where I build a large case that will be my musical instrument case, so to speak. This small case is only for development purposes. Anyway, the PCBs looks great and I'm very eager to start populating them with components. And the assembled board fits perfectly on the mounting plate. Next up we have the mounting brackets that is used to hold the aluminium rails together and give the correct spacing. I considered to 3D print these as well, but I ended up using 30mm wide and 2mm thick aluminium raw material. The woodworking part turned out to be the most difficult part of the build, at least for me. I decided to use dowels and wood glue to put the enclosure together instead of using wooden screws. I bought a doveling jig set and it proved to be a good investment. I don't have any tools suitable for fine woodworking, so I had to use what I got. Luckily the Paulovnia wood was very easy to work with. But I invested in a new saw blade for the meter saw, so I could do some precision cuts. I tried to follow the old rule, measure twice, cut once. And it basically took me a whole day to cut the wood pieces, drill the holes for the dowels and glue everything together. It would probably take a fraction of that time if I had the right tools and the right skills. So the next step was to attach the mounting plate to the back panel and the PCB to the mounting plate. After some consideration I decided to buy a ready-made power supply instead of DIYing. And the choice fell on Tip-Top Audio microsevs. It makes sense to have all the connections and controls accessible from the front, since I will put it on a shelf beside my measurement instruments. The power brick provided by Tip-Top has a really short cable, so I bought another one. But this had a generic connector where you can reverse the polarity of the DC barrel plug. This is just asking for trouble, and the connector was quite bulky as well. So I decided to replace it with an angled DC barrel plug, which is much neater, I think. I had to bump up the output voltage to 15 volt DC, since the microsevs needs between 13 and 15 volt. I will also need a utility module in this case. I will be using it for development and testing of the modules, so I need to be able to access a power connector to test new models, and also check the power consumption. Luckily, there is a module that suits these needs perfectly, the Eurorack Test 3. The module comes as a DIY kit where you can buy it with or without the front panel, depending on if you want to use it in a Eurorack case or as a standalone unit. The kit includes some through-hole components and the PCB with SMD components pre-assembled. The build was very easy with the exception of the attachment of the spacers and locking nuts for the PCB. But that was probably due to lack of proper tools, so the kit shouldn't really be blamed for that. Okay, so let's plug it in. The rail button selects which power rail that should be displayed, and the mode button determines if the module should measure volts, average or peak current consumptions. Okay, let's take a look at the finished product. So, in general, I'm very pleased with the results. I have it was a bit of an experiment to use the Paulovnia wood, but I think it turned out really great and it was actually very easy to work with, so I'm very pleased with that. I have added feet to the bottom and actually to the back side as well, because I find that it can be quite good to have it oriented like this, especially when shooting videos like I'm doing right now. So I did that, and one other takeaway from this project is the rails, the Schroff rails. Yeah, they are using 2.5mm threaded rails, and that is of course a bit of a yeah, most modules use M3 screws, so M3 would have been a better choice, but I haven't been able to source any threaded rails, and I didn't want to use single nuts because I think it's too much hassle to move them around and make sure that you have enough of them and not too many of them, and yeah. So I think the solution with a threaded rail is good. And also I was when I was considering using the flying busboard leads that comes with micro sevs from Tip Top Audio, but I decided to make a busboard. And I looked online for small and cheap busboards, and there are a lot of them, but actually making one yourself is the absolute cheapest solution. I paid around €1 for this one, the PCB, that is. And then of course you need to add the components and stuff, so in the end it's a little bit more expensive, but it's way much cheaper than buying something ready-made. So and I also prepared this for a 5-volt regulator, as you can see here, that there's an empty spot there for 7805. But since I have 5 volts from this power supply, I didn't add those components. Okay, so yeah, so I think what's next? Well, I'm starting to build my first module, and I have started it already, and there will be some video or a couple of videos on that topic soon. So yeah, I think that's all I have to say. I'm as I said, I'm very pleased with this, and I will have good use for it in at my electronic workbench. So yeah, thanks for watching. Goodbye.